Dave Cooper was a man of simple needs. His day started the same way every day did, with coffee, not some fancy alien brew or weird space concoction. No, Dave's preference was a solid cup of Earth's finest, brewed to perfection, strong enough to make your heart question its rhythm, yet smooth enough to settle into your soul. His mug, emblazoned with the phrase, "Universe's okayest engineer," was his badge of honor. And today, just like every other day, he was determined to enjoy that first sip without interruption. The hum of the station's systems was a comforting background noise to his carefully planned morning routine. Somewhere above him, on the upper levels of Orbital Station Alpha, important people were probably running around with their heads cut off, frantically discussing the fate of humanity as a fleet of alien ships loomed ominously at the edge of the solar system. But Dave had more important matters to attend to, like fixing the plasma coupling in Airlock 6 that some idiot had installed backward. "Warning! Warning! Hostile forces detected in the solar system!" The computer blared through the station's intercom system, sounding like it was having a panic attack. Dave barely flinched. He knew that tone all too well. It was the same one the station used when someone spilled coffee on the main console. It didn't mean much. Dave's gaze didn't leave his mug. "I'll get to it after I finish this," he muttered, lifting the cup to his lips. The sound of the station's maintenance bay doors sliding open, followed by the unmistakable screech of hydraulics that had been in desperate need of oiling for at least 2 years, was more than enough to interrupt Dave's perfect coffee moment. "Cooper!" a voice called out, crisp and demanding. Dave looked up reluctantly, his gaze falling on Commander Janet Rodriguez. She stood in the doorway, her uniform crisp and immaculate, completely at odds with Dave's coffee-stained jumpsuit. Her face was etched with the kind of seriousness reserved for military strategy, or, as Dave liked to call it, those people who don't understand the importance of a good morning brew. "Cooper, why aren't you at your emergency station?" she demanded, hands on her hips, exuding the kind of authority that would have made anyone else squirm. Dave casually took another sip of coffee. "This," he said, gesturing to the sprawling array of equipment around him, "is my emergency station. Someone has to keep this tin can running while everyone else is running around like chickens with their heads cut off. Besides, we have more important things to worry about. For example, did anyone check Airlock 6? It's a mess." "Airlock 6? You're worried about a reverse polarized plasma coupling when the largest alien fleet in history is literally in orbit." Commander Rodriguez looked like she was ready to blow a gasket. Dave shrugged. "Yeah, and I'm pretty sure the aliens aren't the ones who shoved gum into the backup generator's ventilation shaft, are they?" Before she could respond, the intercom crackled again. "Warning, this is not a drill. All personnel report to emergency stations immediately." Dave didn't even blink. "Right. You know what? I'll get to it, but only after I finish my coffee." He gestured to his mug, which was now perilously close to the empty mark. Rodriguez's face tightened with exasperation, but she didn't have time to argue. The station rumbled with a distant explosion. Sparks flew from a nearby console. Dave glanced at his tablet, noting the latest round of critical systems failures. "See?" he said, as if proving a point. "I told you. Somebody should have checked the system before hitting the big red button." He stood up, setting his mug down with a heavy sigh. "But whatever. Now I have to fix the backup generator and deal with the fact that we might be getting invaded. It's going to be a long day." Rodriguez opened her mouth, no doubt to say something about the importance of military strategy or the fate of humanity, but before she could, another explosion rocked the station. This one was much closer. Dave didn't even flinch. "Fine," he grumbled, grabbing his toolbox, "but someone owes me a new coffee maker. The good kind this time, not that commissary stuff." And with that, Dave turned and walked toward the latest crisis, all while muttering under his breath about the universe's impeccable timing. Dave Cooper's day, it seemed, was only getting more ridiculous. As he trudged through the dimly lit halls of Orbital Station Alpha, clutching his toolbox and muttering under his breath, he couldn't help but think, "This is so typical. The universe always managed to throw its biggest disasters at the worst possible time." The last time a fleet of alien ships showed up, he'd been halfway through fixing a coolant leak in the life support system. But today, no. Today, he was fixing the backup generator and trying to avoid getting blown up by an alien empire with an attitude problem. Great timing. The explosions, thankfully, had ceased for the moment, but the station still shuddered under the impact of something big. A lot bigger than the usual maintenance issues he was used to. His tablet buzzed with an alert, notifying him that yet another system was failing. The comms array, of course, was on the list. Dave sighed, pressing the button on his tablet to pull up the diagnostics. "Well, at least this one's easy," he muttered, eyes scanning the specs. "I should have known better than to trust the cutting-edge stuff they keep installing around here. It's like they think just because something's shiny, it works. They don't even bother checking the basics." He made his way down to the communications array, a vast room filled with tangled wires, blinking consoles, and a faint hum of malfunctioning machinery. The lights flickered intermittently as if the station itself were losing faith in its own existence. Inside, the damage was exactly what Dave had expected. Nothing catastrophic, just the usual issues that come with cutting corners. A few broken connectors here, some jacked up wiring there. But still, somebody had to deal with it. Dave wasn't the kind of person to sit back and watch the station, let alone Earth, go down in flames because some officer thought they could skip routine maintenance. He was the guy who fixed things. Kneeling down beside the array's control panel, he flipped open his toolbox. As he did, the intercom crackled to life again, the voice of Commander Rodriguez cutting through. "Cooper, this is not a drill. The fleet is demanding our surrender. I don't care if you're busy fixing cables. We need you up here to discuss strategy." Dave didn't even look up from the panel. Strategy? He raised an eyebrow, his fingers working deftly to rewire a broken connection. "Tell the alien overlords we'll have a strategy meeting in about, 20 minutes, after I finish this." "What do you mean, finish this?" Rodriguez's voice was laced with disbelief. "Dave, the fate of humanity is at stake." "Oh, I know," Dave said with an exaggerated tone, tightening a screw. "But you can't exactly have a strategy meeting if the comms are down. Someone has to do the boring stuff so you can do the dramatic stuff. Besides, if your precious strategy includes fixing this mess of a station, I'm already one step ahead." There was a pause on the other end before Rodriguez sighed. "Just hurry up. I'll send someone to help you." "Good luck with that," Dave mumbled, now completely immersed in his work. "Half the crew doesn't even know how to use the tools in the toolbox. They probably think screwdriver is a type of cocktail." As if on cue, another explosion rocked the station, this one close enough that Dave felt the floor beneath him tremble. His tablet buzzed again, but this time it wasn't a maintenance alert. It was a message from General Thompson. It was marked URGENT. Dave rolled his eyes. The last time Thompson had sent an urgent message, it was about the coffee machine being broken. Now, with actual, potentially planet-ending problems, he wondered what the general was panicking about this time. He tapped the message open. "Cooper, the Galactic Empire has begun their invasion. We need you to get up here and assist with technical troubleshooting for their fleet. The aliens are demanding our surrender, and we need to stall them while we figure out how to fight back." Dave blinked at the screen. "Assist with technical troubleshooting for their fleet?" he repeated aloud. "Seriously? They show up with an entire invasion fleet, and they want me to fix their problems?" He could already hear the faint sounds of alarms wailing in the background. The message had come just as the lights flickered again, and more explosions reverberated through the station. But it wasn't enough to distract him from the absurdity of the request. "Fine. Whatever," Dave muttered. wiping his hands on his jumpsuit as he finished connecting the last wire in the communications array. "I'll help with their technical difficulties, but they better have coffee waiting when I get there." As he stood up, wiping his hands on a rag, he heard footsteps approaching. A moment later, Lieutenant Chen, a wide-eyed, overly eager engineer, appeared in the doorway. He was the one who'd installed the faulty plasma coupling in Airlock 6, and just looking at him made Dave feel like his day was about to get even worse. "Commander Rodriguez sent me to help with the comms," Chen said, holding out a tool bag that looked like it was barely holding together. "Good timing," Dave replied dryly, glancing at the mess around them. "You can hold this while I go save Earth." Chen blinked. "Save Earth? What do you mean?" Dave walked past him, shaking his head. "I've just been asked to troubleshoot the alien fleet's systems. They're probably about to invade, but hey, their systems need some work first, right? Standard procedure." Chen opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, a new message flashed on Dave's tablet. This one was from General Thompson. "Cooper, the aliens have agreed to let us send a technical consultant to inspect their fleet. Your credentials are being processed, and we need you there now. No excuses." "Great," Dave sighed. "Now I'm going to be someone's technical consultant, and I haven't even had lunch yet. I guess it's time to go fix the galaxy." He paused at the door and looked back at Chen. "You stay here and make sure this station doesn't explode, kid. I've got a bigger mess to clean up." With that, Dave strode off, heading toward the docking bay. The station shook again, this time with a force that rattled even his well-worn toolbox. "All right, Dave," he muttered to himself, a wry grin forming on his face. "Let's go fix an empire." Dave Cooper's feet hit the metallic floor of the docking bay with the heavy thud of inevitability. If there was one thing that Dave knew, it was that when things were going wrong, they were usually going to get worse before they got better. Today was shaping up to be a shining example of that principle. The Empire's flagship loomed in the distance, a gargantuan vessel that looked more like an oversized weapon than a ship. Its sharp edges and gleaming surface gave it the look of something that might slice through space itself. Dave couldn't help but feel a pang of disbelief as he looked at it. Here he was, a civilian contractor in a stained jumpsuit, about to board a warship from a galaxy-conquering empire to fix their messed-up tech. "Just another day in the life of Dave Cooper," he muttered to himself. Behind him, the station's maintenance crew scrambled in all directions, trying to avoid getting caught in the wave of panic that had spread across the station like wildfire. Dave was used to chaos, but this level of chaos, it was new. He could already see his name on some hypothetical heroes list for saving Earth by not panicking and actually fixing things. The airlock doors slid open with a hiss, and Dave stepped into the docking bay, where two high-ranking Imperial officers were waiting. They stood at attention, their sleek black armor gleaming in the station's sterile lighting. One of them, a tall, intimidating figure with glowing blue eyes, stepped forward. "Engineer Cooper," the officer said, his voice smooth, as if he'd been trained to sound calm no matter what the circumstances. "I trust you have the proper documentation?" Dave raised an eyebrow. "I'm not here to file papers, pal. I'm here to fix your broken toys. And speaking of toys, this ship, you guys don't do basic maintenance, do you?" The officer blinked, momentarily stunned by Dave's bluntness. "You... what?" "Oh, come on," Dave said, tapping his tablet as it displayed a flood of error messages. "You can practically hear your thrusters crying out for help. I bet you haven't serviced your engines in decades. Let me guess. You just hit auto-update on your entire fleet, didn't you?" The officer seemed to realize that Dave was far from intimidated. His gaze flicked to the other officer, who simply nodded. "I was expecting you to be, well, more, humble," the officer admitted, clearly trying to regain his composure. "But your credentials are valid. You'll have access to our systems. Follow me." "Thanks, but no thanks," Dave replied, holding up his tablet. I can access everything I need from right here. The more I wander around, the more likely I am to break something. And let's face it, it's probably already broken." The officer looked like he wanted to argue, but instead he simply waved his hand, dismissing Dave's attitude. "Very well, Engineer Cooper, but be quick. The Supreme Overlord will not tolerate delays." Yeah, I'll get to it," Dave grumbled, already tapping away on his tablet. "Not like I've got all day to fix your entire fleet." The officer led Dave down a long, gleaming corridor, walls lined with pulsating holographic displays and flashing red warning lights. Dave couldn't help but marvel at the stark contrast between the beauty of the ship's design and the utter mess of its systems. It was as if the entire fleet had been built to look good but had never been designed to function properly. They finally reached the command center, and Dave was led inside to a massive control room filled with alien technicians frantically typing at consoles. Dave's eyes quickly darted to the center of the room where the massive holoscreen displayed a map of Earth, with red dots pulsing along the surface. He noticed the nearby console was overloaded with so many warnings and error messages that it looked like someone had used it as a dartboard. "All right, let's see what you've got," Dave said, stepping forward with confidence. He began to tap commands into his tablet, pulling up the ship's diagnostics. "Okay, we've got a whole mess of issues here. Reactor fluctuation, coolant system failure, navigation errors. I'm guessing you've been too busy with conquering the galaxy to handle the boring stuff, like actually keeping your ships running." The alien technician beside him, a creature with elongated limbs and translucent skin, shot him a disapproving look. "We are not the ones in need of repairs, human. Your technology is inferior to ours." Dave snorted, adjusting the focus on his tablet screen. "Yeah, sure. And I'm the Emperor of Mars. Look, I'm not saying your tech is bad. I'm saying your maintenance practices are horrible. All you've done is build these shiny ships and forgot to maintain them. Every single one of your systems has a fatal flaw somewhere. Probably some prideful engineer who thinks their stuff can't break." The alien technician's mandibles twitched, clearly annoyed. But before the situation could escalate, the lights flickered, and an emergency siren began to wail through the ship. "See, I called it," Dave muttered, eyes still glued to the tablet. "I told you your thrusters were on their last legs. Looks like I've got my work cut out for me. The reactor's failing, the cooling system's gone haywire, and I'm pretty sure this station's about to lose power. Can you just imagine if I wasn't here?" The technician made an indecipherable sound, a cross between a growl and a chitter, and stepped aside. "Do what you must, human. We'll allow you to work." Dave grinned. "Oh, I must." He dove into the systems, working with the speed and precision that only years of maintenance experience could provide. The alien technicians watched him, their expressions ranging from curiosity to outright confusion as he worked through a mess of cables, control panels, and diagnostics. Dave ignored their looks and muttered to himself, "If they'd just done routine diagnostics like I told them, none of this would have happened. You can't just skip over basic checks and expect your ship to hold together. It's like they think they can skip a maintenance cycle and nothing will break. Let me tell you something. Nothing ever holds together when you neglect it long enough. Nothing." As he plugged in his tablet and ran a few final tests, the emergency alarms finally quieted. The main power systems flickered to life, and the reactor's power output stabilized. The coolant system buzzed, and the lights in the command room went from red to green. Dave stood up, wiping his hands on his jumpsuit, grinning like someone who had just finished a hard day's work. "Done. You might want to take a look at your thermal reactors. They're running a bit hot, but that's a job for later. I'd call it good, but I'm not sure you'll believe it. Let's just hope this empire of yours learns to do basic diagnostics next time, or you'll be dealing with me again." The alien technician was silent for a moment before he turned to his superior. "We will conduct further investigations, of course. But perhaps the human was right." Dave shrugged, tapping his tablet to upload the final system report. "I'm not here to argue about who's right or wrong, pal. I'm just here to make sure you guys don't explode." Just then, another message came through. General Thompson's voice boomed across the command room. "Cooper, what have you done? We've had reports that the Empire has paused their invasion to perform repairs." "What the hell?" Dave smirked. "I did what I always do. I fixed things. Now they're probably rethinking their plans to invade Earth." "How?" the general demanded, his voice now dripping with both awe and irritation. Dave's grin grew wider. "Turns out, nothing is more effective at stopping an invasion than making sure the enemy can't even keep their ships running. Sometimes all it takes is a little bit of maintenance." The command room fell into an eerie silence. Dave leaned back, feeling smug, until the alien technician spoke up. "The systems are stabilized. For now, human. But next time, we will not rely on you." Dave laughed. Sure. But if you need help again, just give me a call. I'll be here, fixing things. In the meantime, I'm going back to my station." He turned toward the exit, whistling. As he left the command room, he felt something strange, a sense of accomplishment. Not from saving the planet, no, that was a side effect, but because, once again, he had saved the day with a little elbow grease and a whole lot of sarcasm. Dave Cooper wasn't sure if he was more exhausted or more annoyed. After successfully stalling an alien invasion, you'd think he'd get a chance to kick back, enjoy a cold drink, and maybe catch up on a few non-urgent maintenance tasks. But no, the universe had a different idea for him. As he walked down the cold, shiny halls of the Imperial flagship, his mind was racing. Everything had been going surprisingly well since he'd started fixing their ridiculous ship. Sure, it was held together with duct tape and Dave's irreverent sense of humor, but the systems were functioning. He could almost taste the glory of his success, if that taste was bitter enough to make his teeth ache from all the mandatory meetings he was now being dragged into. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing an elaborate meeting room. In the center, a massive holographic display showed Earth and a dozen Imperial warships still hovering ominously around it. The human leaders, General Thompson included, were gathered around a sleek black table, their faces grim. But as Dave stepped inside, their eyes lit up as if they'd seen a ghost. "Cooper!" General Thompson exclaimed, looking like he'd seen a man who'd just been yanked out of a war zone. "You're finally here! You won't believe what's going on!" "Yeah, I kind of figured something was happening," Dave said, throwing his toolbox onto an empty seat. "The lights were blinking, the sirens were blaring, and I'm pretty sure I just fixed the flagship's entire power grid. What's next? Do I have to reprogram the captain's coffee maker too?" General Thompson barely acknowledged the sarcasm. "You saved Earth from an invasion, Cooper. The Empire was ready to launch a full-scale assault. They stopped everything to fix their ships. You bought us time. And now, we need your help again." Dave froze for a moment. "Wait, you want me to do more? After all that? I fixed their ships, didn't I?" "Yes," General Thompson said, his voice tight. "But now the Empire wants something else from us. They've requested your services again, and we have no choice but to comply." Dave sighed dramatically. "You've got to be kidding me. Let me guess. They want me to come up with a manual for how to use a wrench?" "It's worse," Thompson said, pacing. "They've agreed to allow us to send a consultant to their flagship to complete the diagnostic process. You'll be representing us, Cooper. This is serious. If you don't go, they might reconsider their truce and, well, the last thing we need right now is another invasion." "And you think I'm the one for the job?" Dave asked incredulously. "I'm a maintenance guy, not a diplomat." Before Thompson could respond, one of the Imperial officers, the same one who had greeted Dave earlier, stepped forward with a pile of paperwork. "Engineer Cooper," he said with a stiff bow, "as per our agreement, we require you to fill out the necessary forms before you can proceed with your consultation." Dave blinked. "Forms? What, like a lot of forms?" "Yes," the officer replied, sliding the pile of paper across the table. "There are procedures to follow, and we will need signatures in triplicate." Dave stared at the stack of forms. I thought we were on the brink of a galactic war, not a bureaucratic nightmare. General Thompson gave him a look. It's the Empire, Cooper. They're organized in their own way. And right now, their way involves paperwork. A lot of paperwork. Ugh, fine, Dave grumbled. How long is this going to take? At least an hour, the officer said without an ounce of irony. And that's if everything is in order. Dave rubbed his temples. Great, just great. He shuffled through the forms, each one more absurd than the last. Form TR-402 for alien technology consultation. Form FZ-5B for hazardous environment acceptance. Form ZXT-99 for liability waivers. By the time he reached the last one, he was seriously contemplating just walking off the ship. Do I even need to read these? Dave asked flatly. They look like they're all the same. They are not the same, engineer, the officer replied with a stern expression. Each form is crucial for the Empire's legal and technical processes. Dave glanced at General Thompson, who seemed as amused as he was at this point. This is your plan? Send me to do battle with paper instead of laser cannons? I'm afraid so, Thompson said, his mouth twitching into something resembling a smile. Just fill them out, and then we'll send you on your merry way to finish fixing the Empire. After what felt like a century, Dave finally finished filling out the forms. He was a little cross-eyed by the end, but at least it was done. As he handed the stack back to the officer, he sighed deeply. All right, I'm ready to fix whatever mess you've got left on that ship. But the next time I'm asked to sign anything that doesn't involve a wrench or a manual override button, I swear I'll throw myself into a space vacuum. The officer took the papers with a slight bow and left, leaving Dave alone with the humans in the room. Thompson, still trying to hold back a grin, spoke up. You're a brave man, Cooper, and I don't think we could have made it through this without you. Yeah, well, if you want to send me back in there, Dave said, standing up, you better have more coffee waiting, and no more forms. I swear, if they hand me another stack, I'll volunteer for a combat mission. You're not going anywhere near a combat zone, Thompson said, half chuckling. We've already arranged transport to the flagship. They're expecting you. Dave felt the knot in his stomach tighten again. Great. Nothing like a private trip to the flagship of an intergalactic empire to get my heart racing. As he followed Thompson and the rest of the military personnel to the transport bay, he couldn't help but think about the sheer absurdity of it all. He had gone from being a simple maintenance engineer to the last line of defense against an alien invasion. And now his job wasn't just fixing the mess. The mess was now everywhere. A galactic empire, crushed by its own lack of maintenance, was going to need a lot more than a diagnostic check. It was going to need someone who could fix the big things. The things that mattered. The things that could actually save the galaxy. And that was going to take more than a wrench and some paperwork. But hey, if Dave had learned anything, it was that the right attitude, and a bit of caffeine, could solve just about anything. As the transport ship's door closed behind him, Dave muttered to himself, "Let's get this over with." And with that, the Empire's flagship, and whatever fresh hell awaited him there, loomed on the horizon. Dave Cooper had never been one for big speeches, especially not after a day filled with paperwork, bureaucratic nonsense, and nearly losing his patience with the entire Imperial fleet. But as he stood before the massive holographic map of Earth, now visible from the center of the Imperial flagship's operations room, he couldn't help but think, this is it. This was the moment when everything either fell apart or came together. The ship hummed around him, still holding together by the thinnest thread of maintenance magic. Thanks to his earlier fixes, the lights were now steady, the thrusters hummed without whining, and most of the emergency alerts had ceased. Of course, that didn't mean the flagship was operating at 100%, but compared to when he first boarded, it felt like a victory. The officers who had greeted him earlier now hovered near the walls, watching his every move like hawks. The tension in the room was palpable. The entire fate of Earth rested on his shoulders. But Dave? Well, Dave was just trying to make sure he didn't get vaporized in the process. "Engineer Cooper," the officer with the glowing blue eyes spoke up, his tone stiff. "The Supreme Overlord requests your presence. We need final approval for the system reconfiguration you've initiated." Dave didn't look up from the console. He was elbow deep in a panel doing what he did best, fixing the unfixable. "Tell your overlord he can wait," Dave muttered, twisting a bolt. "I've got another 2 hours of work to do on this ship, and I haven't even touched your weapon systems yet. And I swear, if I see one more broken coolant valve, I'm going to throw it out the nearest airlock." The officer flinched but said nothing. The tension in the room was almost unbearable, but Dave ignored it, continuing his work with mechanical precision. There was a rhythm to what he did. He didn't need praise, he didn't need accolades, just the satisfaction of getting something working again. Finally, after what felt like hours, Dave straightened up and wiped the sweat off his brow. "All right," he said, turning to the officer. "The core is stable. The weapon systems are running in the green, and I've just rerouted power so your cooling systems won't cause another meltdown. Everything is back online." For a moment, the officer simply stared at him. It was clear the Empire was used to dealing with high-ranking engineers and military experts, but Dave was something entirely different. He didn't care for the politics or the honor of saving humanity. He only cared about the job. "Excellent," the officer said finally after an awkward pause. "The Supreme Overlord will meet with you in the briefing room. The invasion is temporarily called off." Dave didn't waste time with formalities. He followed the officer down yet another gleaming hallway, his boots echoing in the stillness. They reached a large, circular chamber at the heart of the flagship. A long table dominated the center, around which sat the leaders of the Empire, creatures far larger and more intimidating than anything he'd encountered before. At the head of the table sat the Supreme Overlord, an imposing figure with smooth, chrome-like skin and a helmet that covered most of his face. Dave had half expected a grandiose villain monologue, but instead, the Overlord simply motioned for him to sit. Dave did, plopping down on the cold metal seat as casually as if he were at a greasy spoon diner. "Well, you wanted to talk. Let's get this over with." The Overlord's voice was deep and resonant, coming through a translator embedded in his throne-like chair. "You have saved your world, human. This is unexpected. But the Empire does not forget such actions." Dave crossed his arms, leaning back in his seat. "I didn't do it for a reward. I fixed your ship because I don't want to get blown up. You'd be amazed how much a bit of basic maintenance can prevent a crisis." There was a ripple of silence around the table. For a moment, Dave thought they might just give him a medal, or worse, a title, which was exactly what he didn't need. Instead, the Supreme Overlord nodded. "We will not invade Earth, for now. Your species is too resourceful, and this ship," he glanced around, "was not designed to fail so easily. We misjudged you, human." "I get that a lot," Dave said, shrugging. "People assume because I fix things for a living, I'm some kind of glory seeker. I'm just here to keep the lights on and stop your ships from crashing into each other. Your invasion was always going to fail if you didn't have basic protocols in place. It's just common sense." The Overlord stared at him for a long moment, then tilted his head slightly. "Perhaps your species would be useful to us, after all. We will reconsider our approach to your planet. Your leadership will contact you in the coming days." Dave stood up, his body finally relaxing now that the pressure was off. "Fine. But before you go off rethinking things, there's one more thing you should know." The Overlord raised an eyebrow. "What?" "Next time," Dave said, pointing toward the massive control console behind him, "maybe run a systems check before you think about conquering a planet. You've got a lot of work to do, and you still don't know how to fix your coffee machines. I'm just saying, if you want to get things done right, you could use a human like me." The room fell dead silent for a moment. Then the Overlord let out a deep, vibrating chuckle. It echoed off the walls, sending shivers through the room. "You are bold, human." "That's what they all say," Dave replied, flashing a grin. "And I don't charge extra for bad coffee." With that, Dave turned and walked out of the room, his toolkit in hand and a little less stressed about the state of the galaxy. Sure, there would be more work ahead, more alien ships needing repairs, more systems failing, and probably more emergency paperwork. But for now, Earth was safe. And that, for a guy like Dave Cooper, was the best kind of victory. As he made his way back to his makeshift quarters aboard the flagship, Dave couldn't help but think about his favorite thing in the universe: a hot cup of coffee. No alien empire, no galactic disaster, and certainly no paperwork could change that. And as he took a long sip from the steaming mug in his hand, he sighed contentedly. "Now," he muttered to himself, "who needs a plasma coupling fixed next?"